Imagine a moment when the world feels like it's turned its back on you, when every door you knock on stays locked, and the air itself seems to whisper that you're invisible. That was my life at 26, stranded in a decaying one-bedroom apartment in Kent, Ohio, where the walls groaned with every gust of wind. The radiators hissed, spitting heat that never quite reached the corners of the room. I'd lost my job as a dispatcher, a casualty of some corporate decision to ship my role to Arizona. Numbers, they said. Nothing personal, but when you're counting pennies to buy instant noodles, it feels personal. For months, I clawed my way through temp gigs, pet sitting, and selling old clothes online. I sent out over 100 applications, grocery stores, offices, warehouses. Silence. Always silence. Feel that weight, the way it presses on your chest, the way it makes you question if you're even real. One November night, the cold seeped through the cracked window, curling around my fingers as I sat at my splintered kitchen table. My laptop's blue glow was the only light in the room, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts on the peeling wallpaper. I was searching for a lifeline, typing ways to make money fast into Google. Each keystroke a plea for something to hold on to. A forum popped up, filled with strangers sharing their side hustles. One user, broke in Boston, raved about secret shopping. Easy cash, almost fun, they claimed. Their words felt like a beacon, a flicker of hope in the dark. I clicked their link and it led me to Craigslist. Pause for a moment. Picture that screen. The promise of salvation glowing in pixelated text. The ad was simple. Seeking mystery shoppers in Ohio, flexible hours, $35–50 per shop, no upfront cost. It screamed scam, but desperation doesn't care about red flags. I sent an email, my heart thudding with a mix of fear and need. Within an hour, a reply landed from Denise Weston, her Gmail address oddly formal. Her message was polished, corporate, with a PDF attachment detailing instructions and a form. For my PayPal and availability, trust this moment. Let it pull you in because it feels safe, doesn't it? I filled out the form using a burner email to stay invisible and hit send. By morning, Denise had assigned my first task: evaluate an employee at Mayfair Market, a grocery chain I knew well, in a quiet suburb 15 minutes away. The instructions were clear. Enter between 6 U and 8 p.m. Observe the worker in aisle 4. Ask for canned tuna and report on their service. Remain anonymous, she stressed. Submit within 2 hours for payment. It felt manageable, familiar even. I'd worked retail in high school, dodging secret shoppers like they were phantoms, always perfecting my smile for their hidden scorecards. This time, I'd be the ghost. At 6:17 p.m., I stepped into Mayfair Market, my black hoodie worn soft from years of use. The air smelled of bleach and rotting fruit, a sharp contrast to the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Breathe in that scent, let it ground you. But notice how your skin prickles, how your pulse quickens. I wandered the aisles, pretending to browse, my eyes darting to aisle 4. It was empty except for one employee, a young man, maybe 24, with hollow cheeks and light brown hair that fell limp over his forehead. His red vest, faded and frayed, bore the name Miles in crooked stitching. He shelved cans with mechanical precision, his eyes dull, like he'd checked out of his own life. I lingered by a display of coupons, my fingers trembling as I steadied myself. You've felt that moment, haven't you? When you know you're being watched, but you can't prove it. I approached him, my voice softer than I intended. Hey, sorry to bother you. Can you help me find the canned tuna? Miles didn't look up. Middle of the aisle, left side. He muttered, his tone flat, his hands still moving. No greeting, no eye contact, just a vague gesture toward the shelves. I stood there, waiting for something more. some spark of humanity. Nothing. Thanks, I said, lingering, hoping he'd redeem himself. Silence. Have a good night, I added, forcing a smile. He glanced up then, his eyes bloodshot, lifeless, like they could see through me. You too, he mumbled, but his gaze lingered, heavy, unblinking. Feel that stare, how it pins you in place, how it makes the air feel too thick to breathe. I jotted his name in my phone and turned away, but a chill crawled up my spine, that primal instinct you get when someone's eyes are on you. I glanced back. Miles stood at the edge of the aisle, watching me, his body still, his face unreadable. I kept moving, weaving through the store, but he was there, by the produce, then near the dairy, never stalking, just staring. My hoodie felt too tight, my breath shallow. At the checkout, a cheerful cashier named Amber greeted me with a bright smile, passing her secret shopper test effortlessly. I nodded, barely present, and hurried to my car. Picture yourself running, the cold night air biting your face, the keys shaking in your hand. I locked the doors, turned on the dome light, and typed my report, noting Miles's failure. No greeting, no help, no warmth. As my fingers moved, a shadow crossed my windshield. My heart stopped. It was Miles, striding across the parking lot, his steps heavy, purposeful. He didn't look at me, but he passed close, climbing into a battered black sedan 3 spaces away. His engine roared and he sped off, leaving me frozen, my pulse hammering in my throat. The next morning, $40 appeared in my PayPal, and another assignment waited in my inbox. I tried to move on, to bury the unease. 3 nights later, I was at Jesse's duplex across town, curled on his couch with takeout containers scattered around us. His dog, Mako, slept at our feet, his soft breaths the only sound besides the TV. Let yourself sink into that comfort, the warmth of safety, because it's about to shatter. At 11:40 p.m., a pounding shook the door. Not a knock, but a violent demand. Jesse froze, the remote slipping from his hand. Mako leapt up, growling. "Who's that?" Jesse whispered, his voice tight. We crept to the window, peering through the blinds. My stomach plummeted. It was Miles, his hoodie the same, his eyes wild, like he hadn't slept since the store. He paced the porch muttering, then slammed his fists against the door again. Feel the dread pooling in your chest, the way it chokes your breath. Jesse cracked the storm door's window. "Hey, you need to leave, now!" Miles didn't flinch. "I know what you did," he shouted, his voice raw. "You ruined everything." Jesse turned to me confused. "What's he talking about?" I couldn't speak, my mouth dry, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my limbs. Miles kept yelling, his words jagged. "I was on my last chance, and you waltz in asking for tuna like you're better than me. You got me fired. You think you're safe?" He threw his weight against the door, the wood splintering. Mako's barks filled the room, sharp and frantic. "Run!" your mind screams, but where? I grabbed Jesse's arm. "He followed me. He knows where I am." Jesse dialed 911, his voice steady but urgent. Within minutes, red and blue lights flashed. Through the blinds. Miles bolted, but an officer tackled him in the yard, cuffing him as he thrashed. They found a folding knife tucked in his waistband. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Days later, a detective filled in the gaps. Miles, real name Brandon Miles Henley, had worked at Mayfair for 2 years, teetering on the edge with multiple write-ups. The night I evaluated him, his life was unraveling. His girlfriend left, his car failed inspection, his rent was overdue. My report was the final blow, costing him his job. But the question that haunted me, the one that kept me awake, was how he found me. I'd used a fake name, a burner email, no trace to my real life. Lie awake with that thought, let it twist. In your mind, how did he know? The detective suggested store cameras, maybe a license plate he tracked. I'll never know. I quit secret shopping, turned down every offer, and took a call center job to rebuild. Jesse installed a camera at his door, and we moved months later, hoping distance would erase the fear. But it lingers. Walk into a store now, see a worker shelving cans, and ask yourself, are they watching? Do they know? I crossed a line, doing a job I thought was harmless, and it nearly cost me everything. The weight of that choice, the ripple of ruin it caused, still haunts me. A shadow I can't outrun. The air in my studio apartment felt heavy that night, like it was pressing down on my chest, whispering that I was running out of time. I was alone, curled up on a sagging couch in East Marrero, staring at a bank account that screamed failure. 3 weeks ago, my life had been steady. Front desk at a dental clinic, predictable hours. A paycheck I could count on. Then the layoffs hit. A cold email from corporate saying they were streamlining. Streamlining. That word still burned. A sterile way to say my world was collapsing. Savings dwindled fast. Rent loomed like a guillotine. And the silence of my phone. No job offers, no callbacks. Felt like the universe had turned its back on me. Desperation has a smell, you know. Stale coffee, unwashed dishes, and the faint tang of panic. I was drowning in it. That's when I texted Emily, my friend who always seemed to have a hustle. She'd done everything. Dog walking, selling handmade, earrings, even tutoring kids online. Ever tried Craigslist? She texted back. Craigslist. The word hit like a warning bell. I'd heard the stories, scams, creeps, worse. But Emily swore she'd done babysitting gigs through it. Just be smart, she said. Ask questions. Trust your gut. I'd babysat in high school, kept kids entertained with games and bedtime. Stories. How hard could it be? The idea planted itself, a tiny seed of hope in a mind starved for options. I opened my laptop, the screen's blue glow cutting through the dark, and scrolled through Craigslist's childcare section. Most ads were vague, sketchy, or outright weird. Then I saw it. Childcare needed Saturday evening. The post was calm, almost comforting. Hi, looking for a sitter for our 2 boys, ages 6 and 9, from 5:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Laid-back household. Just need someone responsible while we go out for an anniversary dinner. Pay is $120 for the evening. Message for address. Thanks, Chloe M. Chloe M. The name felt safe, like a mom from a PTA meeting. The pay was generous. $120 for 5 hours. No red flags. I reread it, letting the words wrap around me like a warm blanket. This could be my lifeline. I typed a reply, my fingers trembling with a mix of hope and nerves. An hour later, Chloe responded. Thanks for replying. My husband and I will leave just after 5:30. Boys are Isaac and Dylan. Super easy. They've got dinner already. Just TV, games, maybe reading. Should be a quiet night. She included an address. 1585 Brookfield Lane. Her tone was friendly, ending with a smiley face that made my caution feel silly. I wasn't reckless. You don't survive alone without learning to check the cracks. I Googled the address. It was a cul-de-sac just outside town. Older homes with big lawns. The kind of place where people raised kids and hung Christmas lights. Safe enough. I texted, Emily, the details. Text me when you get there, she replied. If anything feels off, leave. Her words anchored me, a reminder to stay sharp. But hope is a drug, and I was already hooked. Saturday came, dry and gray, the sky heavy with clouds that seemed to watch me. I drove to Brookfield Lane, my old Corolla rattling over cracked pavement. The house appeared at 5:18 p.m., a single story with peeling blue paint and shrubs that clawed at the porch. A wind chime swayed, its soft clink swallowed by the stillness. Something stirred in my gut, a whisper I ignored. The porch light glowed, too bright for dusk, like it was trying to hide something. I knocked. No answer. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I knocked again, harder. Footsteps shuffled behind the door, slow and deliberate. When it opened, a man stood there, tall and gaunt, maybe 60, with thinning gray hair and a patchy beard. His t-shirt was faded, jeans stained with paint. He squinted at me, eyes glinting like he was peering through fog. "You the babysitter?" His voice was gravelly, uninviting. "Yeah," I said, forcing steadiness. "Chloe messaged me, said to be here at 5:30. He scratched his head, glancing past me. "Right. She ran out with the boys for snacks or something. Come in. She'll be back soon." His words felt rehearsed, a script read too many times. My spine tightened, but I stepped inside, telling myself I was overthinking. The house smelled of dust and stale grease, like it hadn't been aired out in years. The front room was a maze of boxes and newspaper stacks, a single recliner sagging. The corner. This wasn't a home, it was a shell. "Sorry for the mess," he muttered, closing the door. The lock clicked, sharp and final. "We're reorganizing." I nodded, my throat dry. He pointed down a narrow hallway. "Living room's back there, TV, couch, wait there." I walked, my sneakers silent on the worn carpet. No toys, no kid drawings, no family photos, just beige walls and generic art collecting dust. "This isn't right," a voice screamed in my head. I ignored it, clinging to Chloe's smiley face. The living room was dim, a brown couch sagging under its own weight. I sat, clutching my phone. Emily's text buzzed. "You good?" I typed back, weird vibe, but okay. Chloe not here, just the husband. He passed the hallway, muttering, his shadow flickering like a ghost. "She should be back by now," he said once. Then again, each time his voice tighter. It felt like a performance and I was the audience. At 5:45, my nerves snapped. "I might head out," I said, standing, keeping my tone light. His eyes widened, almost panicked. "Wait, no. She's probably downstairs. Didn't hear the front door, so maybe she came in through the side." He pointed to a door in the kitchen, half hidden by a curtain. "She's down there with the boys. Craft stuff, art, she's waiting for you." The air turned cold, heavy, like it was holding its breath. I walked to the door, my hand trembling as I opened it. Darkness spilled out, thick and absolute. Smell hit me. Mold, earth, and something sharp like rusted metal. This wasn't a basement, it was a void. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Go on," he said, his voice too bright, too eager. "They're setting up. Run. Now." The command roared in my mind, cutting through the fog. "Actually, I got a text," I stammered. "My ride's here early. I'm so sorry. Maybe we can reschedule." I turned, bolting for the front door. It was locked. He was behind me, his presence a weight on my back. "Hang on," he said, his voice dry, sharp. "You haven't met." The kids. My fingers fumbled with the deadbolt, heart pounding so loud it drowned everything else. It clicked open. I stumbled onto the porch, air hitting my face like a slap. He yelled something, a name, a curse. I didn't care. I sprinted across the lawn, hands shaking as I unlocked my car. I slammed the door, locked it, and floored the gas. In the rear view, he stood in the yard, fists clenched, a shadow under the porch light. He knew I'd escaped. He knew I'd seen. Through it. I drove to a grocery store lot, parked and sobbed, my body shaking like it was purging poison. I called Emily. "What happened?" she demanded. I spilled everything. The house, the man, the basement. "Call the cops," she said. I did. The dispatcher was calm, taking the address, promising a check. An officer called later. They'd visited the house. Empty. No Chloe, no kids, no man. The house was supposed to be vacant. I tried to move on, got a job at a pet store, buried myself. In routine. But 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hi there, we saw your babysitting profile online. 2 boys, ages 6 and 9. $120 for the night. Chloe M. My blood froze. Same words, same pay, I blocked it. 2 days later, another message, different number. Hey, found your ad. Sitter needed near Brookfield. 2 boys, Tom and Chloe. I changed my number, moved to Ridgewood with Emily, left that cursed town behind. But the messages linger in my mind, screenshots saved like evidence of a ghost. How did they find me? How did they know? I scroll job boards now, and sometimes I see it. Same tone, same pay, different names. How many answered? How many went? Down those stairs. The basement's darkness still haunts me. A black hole where hope went to die. I lock my doors twice now, check the windows, and sleep with the light on. Some traps you escape, others follow you forever. The keys to my 2006 Honda CR-V felt heavier than usual that night, as if they knew the deal I was about to make would unravel everything. Step into that moment, where the air smells of autumn leaves and motor oil, where you think you're just selling a car. I'd love that CR-V. Its silver paint chipped from years of loyal service. Its AC grumbling but never quitting. It carried me through late-night drives, rainy commutes, and moments I'd rather forget. When I bought a newer sedan, I couldn't let the old car sit in my West Grove apartment complex, fading like a photograph left in the sun. Craigslist was my go-to. I'd scored the CR-V there years ago from a chatty retiree who tossed in a spare tire. People called the site sketchy, but I'd always been careful. Checked profiles, met in public, trusted my gut. Believe you're safe. Let that confidence settle in because it's about to crack. I spent a Thursday morning photographing the CR-V. 10 shots, from the scuffed dashboard to the odometer's proud 200,000 miles. My ad was straightforward. $2,800, clean title, no major issues. I posted it at noon, expecting quick bites. The day passed in silence, my phone dormant, the apartment's quiet hum mocking my hope. By Friday, I was refreshing my inbox, doubting my price. Then at 10:30 a.m., a text broke through from an unknown number. Hey, saw your CR-V ad, I'm Tony. Still available? Relief washed over me. I replied, Yep, it's here. Want to check it out? His response came fast. Tomorrow night, 8:30 or 9, after work. Cool? Feel that twinge, the shadow of doubt you brush off, because you need this deal. Late meetings weren't odd. Shift workers kept strange hours. But a stranger in the dark stirred unease. My complex was safe, though. A maze of mid-rise buildings in a drowsy suburb. The car sat in the open lot, far from my door. Tony wouldn't need to come inside. Meet me by the car, I texted. Cool, he replied, signing with an X that felt like a misplaced mark. Saturday evening, I polished the CR-V to perfection, vacuuming crumbs, wiping the console until it shone, emptying the glove box of old receipts. By 8:15, I stood in the lot, hoodie zipped against the October chill, scrolling my phone under a street lamp's orange glow. The lot buzzed with life, dog walkers, neighbors parking, headlights slicing the dusk. Sink into that routine, the hum of normalcy, because it's the last you'll feel tonight. At 8:58, a black Dodge Charger glided in, its tinted windows drinking the light. It drifted past me, slow, deliberate, before settling 3 spaces away. The driver's door opened and a man emerged, tall, mid-30s, bald, with tattoos snaking across his forearms. His black jacket and jeans gave him a restless edge, like he was always ready to snap. His smile was tight, a mask that didn't warm his eyes. "You sellin' the CRV?" His voice was low, rough, like gravel underfoot. "Yeah," I said, mirroring his smile. "You're Tony?" He nodded, circling the car, his boots scraping the pavement. "Looks clean. Drive it much?" I launched my spiel. Work commutes. No leaks. Timing belt swapped at 180,000. He listened, pulling a flashlight to inspect the tires, his movements sharp, almost mechanical. "Can I see under the hood?" I popped it open, watching him study the engine with a focus that felt staged. His questions, mileage, upkeep, accidents were right, but his tone was hollow, like he was reciting lines. Catch that dissonance, the way it pricks your nerves, the way you tell yourself it's fine. Then he said, "Can I take it for a spin?" My rule kicked in. "Sure, but I'm coming along, just policy." I forced a chuckle, but it fell flat. Tony's grin returned, cold, lifeless. "No problem." We slid into the CRV, its leather, seats creaking with familiarity. I guided him around the block, then onto the main road, where he pushed the engine hard, testing its pulse. The drive lasted 10 minutes, but his silence stretched it into eternity. He barely spoke, his jaw tight, eyes locked on the road like he was somewhere else. Feel that quiet, how it chokes the air, how it amplifies every sound. Your breath, the engine's hum. Back in the lot, he parked with precision and said, "I like it, feels solid." I stepped out, hope flickering. "So what do you think?" He paused, his gaze lingering too long. "I'll think about it," he said, his voice a dead end. I nodded. "Okay, sure." Then, as if it were nothing, he leaned in. "Hey, mind if I use your bathroom before I go?" "Stop." Feel your pulse spike, the world narrowing to that question, the danger it hides. My instincts roared. "I'd rather not," I said, voice steady. "Nothing personal, just don't let strangers in." Tony froze, his smile vanishing, his eyes drilling into mine, dark and unyielding. The lot felt deserted, the air too still. He nodded slowly. "All right, no worries." I waved, turning away, my legs leaden. I avoided the side door, circling to the front entrance, my mind replaying his gaze. The lobby was empty, its fluorescent lights humming softly. I pressed the elevator button, waiting, glancing back. The doors opened and I stepped in, hitting 3, leaning against the wall as the car rose. Let that relief creep in, the false calm, because it's about to shatter. The elevator stopped and I stepped into the hallway, turning toward my apartment. Then I halted. At the far end, the stairwell door opened and Tony appeared. Same jacket, same stride, same predatory stare. My blood turned to ice. Move, your body begs, but your mind clings to hope, praying it's someone else. It wasn't. His footsteps thundered, fast, closing in. I spun, sprinting the other way, my sneakers skidding on the carpet. The hallway stretched, doors blurring past. I shoved open the opposite stairwell door, plunging down 2 flights, my lungs burning, his steps echoing behind. The garages. Concrete walls amplified every sound. I didn't run to my car, too slow, too open. Instead, I darted to another stairwell, climbing to the ground floor, bursting into the night's cold embrace. Feel the terror, the way it strips you bare, the way it makes you fly. I raced to my CRV, hands trembling as I unlocked it. I dove inside, locked the doors and started the engine, its roar a lifeline. As I sped out, I called 911, my voice shaking as I described Tony, his car, the chase. The dispatcher kept me circling nearby streets. 5 minutes later, police lights flashed at the complex. I parked on the street, watching officers surround Tony's Charger. They caught him forcing a first-floor patio door, his hands empty, his face blank. No tools, no money, no interest in my car. Grasp that truth the way it redefines everything, the way it chills you. He'd used my ad as a trap, a key to my address, my face, my vulnerability. That night, I deleted the Craigslist, had my fingers unsteady. I never touched the site again. Now I meet buyers in police station lots, no exceptions. But the fear lingers, a ghost in my shadow. Walk through a lot at night, hear footsteps, and ask, are they his? I thought I was cautious, thought I held the reins. Tony showed me some doors, once opened, led to darkness you can't escape. The night stretched endlessly, a black canvas pierced only by the flickering lights of the hotel lobby where I worked. My name's Alex, and for years, I'd been tethered to the graveyard shift at a roadside motel just off the highway. The place was a relic. Stale coffee and chipped mugs, neon signs buzzing faintly, and a front desk that smelled of dust and despair. The pay was decent, enough to keep my one-bedroom apartment afloat, but the hours turned me into a ghost. I lived in reverse, sleeping through daylight, waking when the world went quiet. Loneliness creeps in when you're alone at 2 a.m., watching security cameras flicker like they're hiding secrets. That's when I'd lose myself in Craigslist, scrolling through free listings, oddities, and deals too good to ignore. My old Toshiba TV had died weeks ago, its screen fading to black like a tired sigh. Watching Netflix on my laptop was a chore, the tiny screen mocking my attempts at normalcy. I wasn't after anything fancy, just something that worked, something to fill the silence of my days off. Craigslist was a treasure hunt, a digital attic where people shed their lives. I'd found gems before, a working blender, a lamp missing a shade, even a box of books for free. One night, around 2 a.m., I sat at the front desk, half a gas station sandwich in hand. The lobby's fluorescent hum, my only company. That's when I saw it. 50-inch LG flat screen, lightly used, $120. The ad felt real. No stock photos, just a TV on a cheap stand in a cluttered living room, moving boxes stacked nearby. The price wasn't suspiciously low, just low enough to scream, deal. Hope flickered in my chest, a spark in the dark. I messaged the seller, my fingers quick on the keys. Hi, I'm interested in the TV, still available? An hour later, as I checked in a weary trucker, my phone buzzed. Hey, this is Kara from Craigslist. Yes, still available. You can come by tomorrow after 6, keyword if that works. Her name wasn't on the ad, but that wasn't unusual. I texted back, 7 works. What's the address? She sent it. Willow, Terrace Drive, a quiet neighborhood 10 minutes from my place. The ordinariness of it soothed me like a lullaby. I looked up the street on maps. Older homes, big lawns, the kind of place where kids played tag. Cool. See you then, I replied, already imagining the TV in my living room. The next day, after my shift, I stopped at an ATM, pulling $140 to cover any odd change. The sun was low, painting the sky in bruised purples as I drove to Willow. Terrace. The neighborhood was calm, birds chirping, a man mowing his lawn across the street. Kara's house was beige, its porch sagging, grass creeping over the edges. Something about it felt tired, like it was holding its breath. I parked, stuffed the cash in my jacket, and walked to the door. Before I could knock, it opened. A woman stood there, early 30s, dark hair in a messy bun, wearing a faded sweatshirt and leggings. Hey, you must be Alex, she said, her voice warm but clipped. That's me, I nodded, here for the TV. I'm Kara, come in, sorry about the mess. We're kind of between things. Inside, the house matched the ad's photos, sparse, dim, boxes stacked against walls. A single lamp glowed in the corner, casting long shadows that seemed to move when I blinked. The air was thick, like it hadn't stirred in years. "No worries," I said, forcing a smile. "Looks like my place before I moved in." She chuckled, but it sounded hollow, like she was reading a script. "It's back in the bedroom," she said, pointing down a hallway. "Right this way." A prickle ran up my spine, faint but sharp. The house was too quiet. No hum of a fridge, no creak of floorboards, just a stillness that pressed against my ears. I followed her, my sneakers silent on the faded carpet. The hallway was narrow, footprints worn into the fibers like ghosts of past steps. She stopped at the last door. "Right in here," she said, opening it. I stepped inside and froze. The room was a void, no TV, no bed, no boxes, just bare walls and dusty blinds drawn tight. The air was colder here, heavy with the scent of mildew and something sour. This isn't right. The thought hit me like a slap, but before I could turn, the door slammed shut. The lock clicked sharp and final. "Kara!" I shouted, twisting the knob. It rattled, unyielding. "What the hell is this? Open the door!" Silence answered, thick and mocking. Panic clawed at my chest, a wild thing waking up. I pounded. The door, my fists aching, but the wood didn't budge. My phone had no signal, not a single bar. I was trapped, a mouse in a cage. I pressed my ear to the door, heart hammering. Voices drifted through, muffled but real. Kara's sharp and low, and a man's gruff and impatient. There was someone else here. "Let me out," I yelled. "I'm calling the cops." No response. I crossed to the window, yanking at the latch. It was rusted, sealed shut, the glass cloudy with grime. "Breathe, Alex. Think." My mind raced, replaying every step that led me here. The ad, the photos, Kara's texts, they'd felt so real. How had I missed it? I paced the empty room, the walls seeming to close in, the silence screaming louder than any sound. Then I remembered my phone's alarm. Stay calm. Use what you have. I opened the app, cranked the volume, and picked the loudest siren. I tossed the phone into the corner, the wail piercing the quiet like a blade. I pressed myself against the wall beside the door, holding my breath. Wait. Just wait. Footsteps came, heavy and fast. The door creaked open. A man stepped in, tall, stocky, in a black hoodie and scuffed jeans. His eyes locked on the phone, his hands fumbling to silence it. Now! I lunged, slamming into him with all my weight. He stumbled, cursing, but I was through, sprinting down the hallway. Kara appeared in the living room, her face twisting with shock. She reached for me. I ducked, nearly tripping over a box, my heart a drumbeat in my throat. I burst through the front door, the porch air hitting my face like freedom. My keys were in my hand, my car a beacon across the lawn. I hit unlock as I ran, threw myself inside, and locked the doors. The engine roared to life. They were on the porch now, shadows under the dying light. I peeled out, tires screeching, and didn't stop until I reached a gas station 3 blocks away. Inside, I collapsed against the counter, gasping. "Call the cops," I told the cashier. "Someone just tried to trap me." My voice shook, but I didn't care. The police took my statement, Kara's number, the address. They drove me back to the house. It was empty, lights off, curtains drawn, like it had never been touched. A neighbor said it was supposed to be vacant, the owner away for weeks. The ad was gone by morning, Kara's number disconnected. My phone left in that room was lost forever. The cops said it wasn't new. Fake sales to lure people in sometimes. For robbery, sometimes worse. The word hung in my mind, heavy as the room's darkness. I bought a used TV from a pawn shop. but I never touched Craigslist again. Some nights I still see that empty room, feel the locks click, hear the man's footsteps. I wonder who else answered Kara's ad, who didn't think to use an alarm. I escaped, but the trap's still out there waiting. The promise of a silver 2004 Honda Accord felt like a gift I could give my son Jake, a key to his freedom as he neared 18. Step into that hope, the warmth of a father's plan, the belief you're building something good. Jake had been relentless, showing me car listings, acing his driving tests, begging for a reliable ride to his college classes and part-time job. I'd brushed him off at first, my budget tight, but his excitement wore me down. I wanted to surprise him, to see his face light up when he turned the key. Auto Trader, Facebook Marketplace, Cars.com. Every site let me down. Cars either too pricey or snatched up fast. Craigslist was my last resort, a place I'd avoided after hearing too many warnings. But desperation makes you brave. Trust that urge, the one pushing you forward because it's leading you somewhere dark. Late one evening I found it. A 2004 Honda Accord Silver, 68,000 miles, clean interior, no accidents, $3,500. The photos weren't slick. Just a dusty car parked on a gravel driveway, trees crowding the frame. It felt real, like someone's everyday ride, not a dealer's polished bait. The seller, Rick, lived in Red Hill, a speck of a town 20 minutes away. I called him that night. His voice was calm, older, maybe late 50s with a polite drawl. My daughter left it behind when she moved out of state, he said. Runs like a dream. New brakes, new battery, no surprises. Hear that voice, smooth and reassuring, pulling you in. We set a meeting for the next afternoon. I told Jake I had errands, tucked $3,500 into my jacket, and drove out Thursday under a sky heavy with rain clouds. The highway's hum faded as I turned onto narrow, tree-lined roads, the world growing quieter, smaller. Red Hill was barely a place, just scattered houses swallowed by woods. Rick's address led to a long gravel driveway climbing through dense brush and gnarled oaks. At the top stood a single-story house, its paint peeling, porch sagging like it hadn't been touched in years. No Honda Accord waited, only a rusted green pickup with mismatched tires under a carport. The house number matched, though, so I parked on the shoulder and stepped out. The air was still, thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. Feel that silence, how it presses against you, how it makes every step louder. I walked up the driveway, my boots sinking into the gravel. The quiet unnatural. No birds, no breeze, just the faint tick of my cooling engine. The front door had a lion's head knocker, tarnished and heavy. I rapped it once, then twice, nothing. 5 minutes passed, my breath visible in the chill. I knocked again, harder. Silence. I pulled out my phone to call Rick. The ringtone echoed faintly from inside. The house tinny, distant. My stomach twisted. Pause there. Feel the wrongness creeping in the moment you know something's off. I stepped to the porch window, cupping my hands against the glass. The living room was dim, curtains half drawn, stacked newspapers leaning. Against old furniture draped in sheets. In an armchair something sat, slouched, hooded, pale. At first I thought it was a mannequin, its skin too smooth, eyes too glassy. But it wasn't plastic. Stare at it. Let your mind reject it because you don't want to believe what you see. My heart thudded, urging me to leave, but I told myself it was art. A prank. Anything but what my gut screamed. I moved to the side of the house where a garage door hung half open. Inside, rows of car parts, doors, bumpers, seats stood neatly. Labeled, too clean for a scrapyard, too organized for a hobby. No Accord, just parts like trophies. I turned to go, my pulse racing, when a shadow caught my eye through the rear window. Another figure standing in the house, back turned, facing the backyard, motionless as a statue. Freeze. Feel your breath. Catch. The way the world tilts. I tapped the glass lightly, my hand trembling, no response. The back door, ajar, swayed in the breeze, revealing a dark hallway. The ringtone sounded again, fainter, deeper inside. Then it stopped. I stepped back and the blinds I'd just peered through snapped shut, fast, deliberate. Someone was there, watching. Run, your body screams, and this time, you listen. I sprinted to my car, gravel flying, my heart hammering. I dove inside, locked. The doors and floored it, the driveway blurring behind me. I didn't stop until the main road, my hands shaking on the wheel, my rearview mirror empty but my mind expecting that pickup to appear. At home, I checked Craigslist. The ad was gone. Rick's number, disconnected. I called the police. My voice, unsteady, explaining the house, the figures, the garage. They listened, but without a plate or name, their hands were tied. The property, they said, had been abandoned for years. Sink into that, the way it makes your skin crawl, the way it changes. What you thought was real. A week later, a detective left a voicemail. They'd searched the house. No one lived there, hadn't for over a year. No Rick, no vehicles registered. The pickup was gone, but in the basement, behind a false wall, they found photos. Dozens printed from an old camera. People in cars, at the door, mid-conversation. Some smiled, some looked terrified. One showed a man circling the house just like I had. Another was me, standing by my car, unaware. See yourself in that photo, frozen, exposed, hunted. They never caught the man squatting there, using burner phones and fake ads to lure people. Maybe he didn't kill, just watched, controlled, or worse. No one knows what happened to the others. In those photos, I never told Jake. I bought him a used Civic from a dealership, his grin worth every penny. But the fear lingers. Drive alone at night, see a gravel road, and ask, who's waiting at the end? I thought I was giving my son a future. Instead, I walked into a trap, a house of shadows where every step could have been my last. The summer of 2002 lingers in my memory like a scar, jagged and raw, etched by a single decision I'll never forgive myself for. My name's Steve, and back then, I was just a dad in Brookville, Illinois, a sleepy suburb where neighbors swapped casseroles and kids played in the streets until dusk. I worked from home, fixing up old cars in our garage, the smell of oil and metal a constant in my life. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. My wife, Denise, worked night shifts as a nurse, leaving me and our son Ryan to fill the evenings, with dreams bigger than our bank account. Ryan was 11, all elbows and ambition, his heart set on hockey like it was the only thing keeping him alive. He'd spend hours in the backyard, smacking pucks into makeshift goals cobbled from trash cans and branches, his face lit with a joy that made every late-night oil change worth it. Ryan idolized Jeremy Roenick, his bedroom plastered with posters, his stick worn from endless practice. He deserved better than trash cans. That spring, he started begging for a real hockey net, the kind regulation-sized, sturdy enough to take his slap shots without toppling. We checked local stores, but even used ones cost more than we could spare. Hope is a cruel thing when you're counting pennies. One night after Ryan went to bed, I sat at our kitchen table, the light bulb above flickering like it was tired too. I opened my laptop, an old Dell that hummed like a dying engine, and turned to Craigslist. Back then, Craigslist was raw. A digital flea market with no polish, just lines of text promising deals if you were quick. I'd scored a snowblower once. Free, still running. Maybe I could find Ryan's net. I scrolled through sports listings, most too far or too pricey. Then I saw it. Regulation hockey goal, slightly used, $50. Comes with puck and 2 sticks. Must pick up. No photos, just a phone number and a sentence that felt like a lifeline. $50. I could make that work. My gut tugged, a faint warning. But Ryan's face, his grin when he scored on a wobbly trash can, drowned it out. I dialed the number. A man answered, voice low and flat, like he was reading off a card. "Yeah, still got it. You want it?" I swallowed. "I do, for my son." He paused, the silence heavy. "I'm in Maryland, but I can meet halfway, after work, 9 or so." Maryland was 2 hours north, but halfway sounded doable. A rest. "Stop off I-90 near Whitfield." It felt off, too rehearsed, but I pushed the doubt down. "You'll bring the net?" I asked. "Yeah, got a pickup. My buddy's got the sticks. He'll follow." Something in his tone, detached, like a predator sizing up prey, made my neck prickle. We set the meet at 9 p.m. I told Denise I'd be back in a couple hours. Ryan begged to come, his eyes wide with excitement. "Please, Dad, I won't get in the way." I said no, firm, but his pleading wore me down. That choice still haunts me, a shadow I can't outrun. I made him promise to stay in the van, no exceptions. The drive was quiet, Ryan chattering about hockey, his voice a tether to normalcy. I wanted to believe this was just a dad doing right by his kid. We reached the Whitfield rest stop at 8:50 p.m., a lonely patch of asphalt under yellow-orange floodlights that cast everything in a sickly glow. A vending area sat dark, a few parked semis idling nearby. I pulled under the brightest light, the van's engine ticking as it cooled. "Stay here," I told Ryan. "If anything feels weird, lock the doors." He nodded, giving a thumbs up, his trust in me absolute. At 9:06, a black pickup rolled in, stopping 10 feet away. It was old, well-kept, with tinted windows and no front plate. The air shifted, heavy, like a storm was coming. I stepped out, my boots loud on the pavement. The driver's window lowered, revealing a man, bald, early 40s, wearing mirrored sunglasses despite the dark. "You Steve?" he asked, voice sharp. "Yeah," I said, my throat dry. "My buddy's got the stuff pulling in soon." I glanced at his truck bed, empty, no net. My stomach twisted, a knot of wrongness. "Why not bring it all in one truck?" I asked. He shrugged. "Couldn't fit." His lie hung in the air, blatant, daring me to call it out. Then it happened. 2 more pickups pulled in, one backing behind my van, the other to the right. Same style, same tint, no hockey gear. Instinct screamed, "This isn't a sale." 6 men stepped out, big, silent, their eyes locked on us. Construction types, gym rats, faces carved from stone. The bald man exited his truck, adjusting his coat. He nodded, and one of the men started toward my van. Ryan. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Wait!" I shouted, pulling out my wallet. "Take the money, it's all I got." I shoved $80 at him, hands shaking. He thumbed through it, scowling. "Where's the rest?" "That's it," I gasped. "Please, just go." His nod was a signal, cold and final. 2 men moved fast toward the van. I ran, screaming, "Don't touch my son." One of them raised a tire iron, the metal glinting as it smashed the van's rear window. Ryan's scream tore through me, a sound I'll carry to my grave. I lunged, ready to fight, to die, anything to protect him. Then red and blue lights flooded the lot, a siren shrieking. A highway patrol car screeched in, spotlight blinding the men. Time froze, a heartbeat between life and loss. The officer leaped out, weapon drawn, shouting commands. The men scattered, 2 trucks speeding off. The third, trapped, idled uselessly. Backup arrived in minutes, cuffing the stragglers. Ryan was safe, shaking, tears streaking his face, but alive. I held him, my own hands trembling, whispering apologies he didn't need to hear. The police questioned us for an hour, their radios crackling in the night. The men they caught talked fast, admitting they'd used fake Craigslist ads to lure dads, men who'd do anything for their kids. It wasn't about the net. It was about control, power, maybe worse. 5 of the 6 were arrested later, but the bald man, the one with the sunglasses, vanished. He's still out there, a ghost in my nightmares. We drove home, Ryan clutching my arm, his silence louder than any words. I told Denise just enough, the broken window, a bad deal, sparing her the terror. Weeks later, a neighbor gave us a used hockey net, free. Ryan loved it, but I never saw him play without checking the shadows. I still see that rest stop, the floodlights, Ryan's scream. I used Craigslist after, but never alone. Never at night. Never with my son. Some choices you survive, but they change you forever. Every black pickup I pass, I scan the bed, searching for a net that was never there, wondering who else answered that ad and what they lost. My name is Aaron Myers, and the Craigslist ad for a live-in cook felt like a lifeline pulled from the wreckage of my life. Step into that moment, where the world has stripped you bare, where a single email promises salvation. I was 30, sleeping, in my battered Honda, stretching a can of soup across 2 days, my breath fogging the windows in Chicago's bitter cold. I'd been a sous chef at a high-end restaurant, crafting dishes that made critics nod until the pandemic shuttered it. Layoffs followed. Then my boyfriend Nate collapsed in the shower, a brain aneurysm stealing him without warning. My apartment vanished, savings dwindled, and I drifted between shelters, chasing any job to claw my way back. That ad, live-in cook, for a private estate in northern Wisconsin, meals included, private quarters, was a beacon in the dark. Cling to that hope. Let it warm you, because it's about to lead you somewhere cold. I didn't check the town's name or search the address. Desperation doesn't ask questions. The estate was off a gravel road, winding through dense pine forests, my Honda's engine straining as it climbed. A massive iron gate loomed ahead, opening slowly, as if it sensed my arrival. Beyond it stood a colonial-style mansion, its tall columns and shuttered windows stark against the gray sky. The air smelled of damp moss and resin, heavy with silence. A man waited on the steps, tall, mid-40s, in a dark gray suit, his face composed but unreadable. "Aaron Myers?" he asked, his hand extended, cool and firm. "I'm Mr. Halverson, the caretaker." Trust his calm. Let it steady you, because it's the last piece you'll feel. I nodded, forcing a smile, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, hiding the weeks I'd lived out of it. "Prince Julian is away," Halverson said, leading me inside. "You'll meet him later." "Prince." I raised an eyebrow, and he caught it. A family title, European roots, no longer ceremonial. The hallway gleamed, lined with 19th century portraits, stern men in uniforms, women in heavy gowns, their eyes following me. We exited through a side door, crossing a garden path to a brick house nestled behind a row of pines. It was small, isolated, its windows dark. "Your quarters," Halverson said, unlocking the door. Inside, wooden floors creaked underfoot. A twin bed with a metal frame stood against one wall. A compact bathroom and kitchenette tucked away. A landline phone, bolted to the wall, was the only link to the outside. "No cell service here," he added. "We'll call this phone if needed." Feel that isolation, how it wraps around you, how it whispers you're alone. He paused, hand on the knob. "Don't mind noises at night. The forest echoes." I nodded, thanking him, but his words lingered, odd, unsettling. He left and I sank onto the bed, my bag at my feet, the quiet pressing in. For the first time in weeks, I had a roof, a lock, a chance to breathe. Savor that relief. Let it anchor you, because it's about to unravel. That first night's sleep wouldn't come. The darkness outside was absolute, the pines swallowing any light. Around 2 a.m., a faint tapping started, soft like fingers brushing the window. I pulled the curtain aside, heart racing, expecting an animal. Nothing but swaying trees, their shadows twisting in the moonlight. At 3:11 a.m., a new sound came, low, muffled, like a sob, human, raw with pain. Hear it, let it crawl under your skin because it's not the wind. I lay frozen, telling myself it was exhaustion, grief playing tricks. Dawn broke, and I dragged myself to the mansion's kitchen, my eyes heavy, my hands unsteady. "You all right?" an older woman asked, her voice kind but probing. She was Margaret, Prince Julian's mother, her silver hair pulled tight, her apron dusted with flour. "Didn't sleep well?" I admitted it, blaming nerves, the new place. She nodded, her eyes softening. "That house hasn't been lived in for a while. It can feel strange, but you'll settle. Believe her, let her warmth ease you because you want it to be true." I cooked breakfast, eggs, toast, hand-cut potatoes, my hands finding rhythm in the familiar. Prince Julian didn't appear, Margaret. Explaining he kept odd hours. The daylight steadied me, the kitchen's warmth pushing last night's fears away. I told myself it was nothing, just a tired mind. After dinner service, I returned to my quarters, washed up, and climbed into bed. The forest's silence thick around me. Then it came again. Tapping, louder, insistent, followed by that same low moan, like someone trapped, pleading. "Sit up, feel your pulse hammer, because this isn't your imagination." I flicked on the light, searching every corner. Nothing. But when I pressed my ear to the floor, the sound sharpened, unmistakable, coming from below the boards. My breath caught, my mind racing. Morning came and I found Halverson outside, his face tight when I asked about the last cook. "Her name was Dana," he said, hesitating. "She arrived 6 months ago, like the solitude. Then after 3 weeks, she was gone. No struggle, her things left behind. Her husband came looking, but she'd vanished." Feel that chill, the way it sinks into your bones, the way it changes everything. He assured me they'd searched, but found nothing, like she'd dissolved into the air. That night the sounds grew unbearable. Tapping turned to pounding, the moans to desperate cries. I couldn't ignore it. Tear at the truth, let it drive you because you can't look away. I ripped the rug from the floor, my hands shaking, searching for loose boards. 3 near the bed were uneven. I pried one up, the wood splintering, revealing a stained white cloth. The smell hit me, rotten, metallic, choking. I pulled the cloth back, and there she was, Dana, her face mummified, twisted in terror, her eyes wide, frozen in a scream. My voice broke, my scream echoing until my throat burned. I stumbled back, the room spinning, the forest's silence mocking me. Halverson called the police. They exhumed the body, confirming it was Dana, strangled. Her husband, who'd claimed to search for her, had stayed one night, killed her, and buried her beneath the floor. He'd dressed a mannequin in her clothes to fool the cameras, walking out as if nothing happened. They arrested him in Milwaukee, his confession cold. She'd planned to leave him. See her face. Let it haunt you, because it's the price of your survival. I resigned that day, driving back to Chicago, parking outside my old restaurant, tears streaming as I sat in the dark. My old life, broken as it was, felt safer than this fresh start. Walk away, but carry that weight. Because some doors opened in desperation, lead only to shadows you can't escape. The silence of my apartment was a living thing, coiling around me in the dim hours when the world slept. My name's Tom, and I was a night shift security guard in a business park outside Birmingham, tethered to a life of 12-hour watches under flickering sodium lights. My days were spent sleeping, my nights staring at grainy camera feeds, the monotony broken only by the occasional car alarm or stray cat. The pay kept my one-bedroom flat afloat, but it cost me the daylight, the rhythm of normal life. Loneliness is a slow poison, seeping into your bones when you're alone at 3 a.m., the world outside a stranger. My phone was my lifeline. Alarm, calendar, a fragile thread to friends I rarely saw. That afternoon I woke to its insistent buzz, the screen a constellation of missed calls and texts. My landlord's name glared. "Call me, emergency, water leak downstairs, water's off." Panic stabbed me awake sharp as a blade before I could even process the words. His voice was cold, all business. A leak from my bathroom had soaked the flat below, ruining their ceiling. I'd slept through his calls, so he'd cut my water hours ago. No shower, no coffee, no flushing. My home was paralyzed. "Your flat, your problem," he said. "Find a plumber, send the invoice." I hung up, my head pounding, the weight of responsibility crushing. A leak wasn't just a repair, it was a crack in the fragile wall holding my life together. I'd been scraping by, every paycheck stretched thin, the threat of eviction a shadow in every late bill. I called plumbers, online listings, local, groups, emergency lines, all booked, silent, or charging fees that mocked my bank account. Desperation is a voice, whispering that any fix is better than none. I texted Amy, my friend who always had a plan. "Crash here if you need," she offered, then added, "Try Craigslist, some guys there take quick gigs." Craigslist. The word felt like a gamble, a digital maze of scams and shadows. But I was cornered. My laptop's glow cut through the flat's gloom as I scrolled the household services section. Ads blurred together, vague, suspicious, or outright absurd. Then one stood out, 38-year-old handyman, skilled, affordable, fast response, plumbing, electrical, repairs, no company, just a number and a promise of speed. Hope sparked, a flicker. In the dark, I texted outlining the leak. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Marcus here," a voice said, warm, almost eager. "Sounds like a loose seal or cracked pipe under the floor. I can be there in an hour. Easy job." His certainty was a rope thrown to a drowning man. I gave the address, too exhausted to wonder how he knew my building. Trust is a door you don't realize you've opened until it's too late. An hour later, he texted, "Outside." I buzzed him in, standing by the door, the flat's stale air heavy with the scent of unwashed dishes. Marcus looked unremarkable. Jeans, navy hoodie, a tool bag over his shoulder, buzzed hair, faint stubble, eyes that didn't linger. Normalcy is a disguise, and I didn't see through it. "Bathrooms down the hall," I said, stepping back. He nodded, moving with quiet purpose, his boots soft on the carpet. I retreated to the kitchen, pouring orange juice, the tang sharp against my groggy haze. The flat felt wrong with him in it, like a stranger's shadow had slipped inside. His voice broke the quiet, calm but pointed. "Hey, can you check this? Something's off." I shuffled to the bathroom, the fluorescent light harsh on the tiles. Marcus crouched by the toilet, pointing at something beneath. The sink was dry, the shut-off valve a silent accusation. My mind was still half asleep, trusting, blind. I leaned in and the world shattered. Pain exploded at the back of my head, a searing jolt that sent me reeling. Darkness swallowed me, thick and absolute. Time fractured, a kaleidoscope of nothing, my body a stranger. Muffled voices clawed me back, a woman's voice urgent, repeating my name. Tom, stay with us. You're okay. I blinked into a flashlight's glare, a paramedic's face above me. My head throbbed, my mouth tasted of blood and metal. Where am I? Hands held me still. Head injury, the paramedic said. Don't move, hospital's next. Fear surged, a tidal wave, drowning the fog. Amy stood nearby, tears carving paths down her face. He's okay, right? She choked. Toot, Amy. She'd come when I didn't answer her texts using the spare key I'd given her. She was my miracle. The paramedics wheeled me out, my flat a distorted nightmare. Familiar furniture turned alien, the hallway too narrow, the air too thick. An EMT whispered about a concussion, saying I could have bled out if Amy hadn't come. Lucky. The word felt hollow, a cruel jest. At the hospital, they stitched my cheekbone, the needle's bite a dull echo of the pain in my skull. Tests, questions, lights in my eyes. I answered on autopilot, my mind replaying the bathroom, Marcus's shadow. A detective arrived, his notepad worn, his voice steady. TV's gone, he said. Laptop, cash, jewelry, your bedroom's ransacked. He didn't touch the bathroom. Marcus wasn't fixing anything. He was breaking me. The police knew. The pattern. Fake Craigslist ads, a quick story, a knockout, a robbery. No fingerprints, a burner number, a ghost. My home, my refuge, was a violated shell. I stayed at Amy's for weeks, jumping at every creak, every shadow. When I returned, the flat felt tainted, its walls whispering Marcus's presence. The scar on my cheek was a map of what I'd lost. I kept a kitchen knife by my bed, its blade a cold comfort in the dark. A door camera became my obsession, its feed a window to a world I no longer trusted. Fear reshaped me, carved me into someone I didn't recognize. I stopped answering calls, let food spoil, checked locks obsessively, once, twice, 3 times. Friends, dating, laughter, they felt like risks I couldn't take. My life shrank to the space between locked doors. Amy tried to pull me back, her visits a lifeline, but she moved away for work a year later. Then it was just me, alone with the ghosts of that night. The police never found Marcus, or whoever he was. He's out there, hiding in another ad, waiting. The scar faded under my beard, but the panic lingers. A knock, a footstep in the hall. They send my pulse racing, my hand twitching for a knife I've since put away. Trust is a memory stolen with my laptop. I avoid strangers, cross the street when someone walks too close. My flat's windows are checked nightly, the blinds drawn tight. Safety is an illusion I rebuild every day. Last week I returned the knife to the drawer, not because I'm healed, but because I'm exhausted by fear. Some wounds you carry, but you learn to breathe through them. I still lock the doors twice, still flinch at sudden noises, but I'm trying to reclaim the man Marcus tried to erase. That's all I have for now. The world felt wrong that night, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Anna gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale against the worn leather, as she navigated the endless stream of headlights on the motorway. The hum of her car's engine was a faint comfort, a tether to reality in the haze of exhaustion that clung to her after a grueling shift. Her eyes, heavy with fatigue, flicked to the rearview mirror, a habit born of caution, a ritual, to anchor herself in the chaos of the after-work rush. But this time, the mirror showed her something that didn't belong, something that clawed at the edges of her sanity. The motorway was a river of steel and light, cars weaving through the dusk like ghosts in a dream. Anna's mind drifted, caught in the liminal space between wakefulness and sleep. where thoughts blurred into shadows. She was a careful driver, always had been, her father's voice echoing in her mind. Keep your eyes sharp, Anna. The road doesn't forgive mistakes. She obeyed the speed limit, checked her lanes, and scanned the vehicles around her, their shapes dissolving into the twilight. The white van behind her was just another piece of the scenery, its silhouette unremarkable, its presence fleeting. She noted it absently, her gaze returning to the road, the rhythm of driving lulling her into a trance. Then it happened. A flicker in the mirror, a shadow that didn't fit. Anna's eyes snapped back, her heart stuttering as the world tilted. There, in the passenger seat of the van, was a little girl, no older than 5, her blonde hair tangled and wild. Her tiny hands pressed against the windshield, fingers splayed like a trapped animal's. Her face a mask of terror. Tears streamed down her cheeks, catching the faint glow of the van's dashboard, and her eyes, wide, desperate, pleading, locked onto something beyond the glass. Anna's breath caught, her mind scrambling to make sense of the image. Was this real? The girl's mouth moved, forming silent words, a cry for help that Anna couldn't hear but felt in her bones. Before she could process the scene, the driver's arm shot across the cabin. A rough, calloused hand clamped onto the girl's head, shoving her down with brutal force out of sight, as if erasing her from existence. Anna's stomach lurched, bile rising in her throat. She caught a glimpse of the driver, a man hunched and gaunt, his thinning hair plastered to a sweaty scalp, his face a grotesque caricature of menace. The van was unmarked, its white exterior a blank canvas for the horrors it concealed. This wasn't a dream. This was happening right now in the mirror's cruel frame. Anna's hands trembled as she gripped the wheel, her pulse hammering in, her ears. The motorway blurred, the world narrowing to the van behind her. You have to do something, a voice screamed inside her, cutting through the fog of exhaustion. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers clumsy, her eyes darting between the road and the mirror. The van was still there, its headlights glaring like predatory eyes. She dialed 000, Australia's lifeline, in the dark, her voice shaking as she spoke. I saw something. A little girl in a van behind me. She was crying, terrified. The driver, he pushed her down, hit her. I think something's wrong. Really wrong. The officer's voice was sharp, urgent, slicing through Anna's panic. Describe the girl. Anna's mind raced. The image of the child burned into her retina. Blonde hair, maybe 5 years old. I didn't see much, it was so fast. The officer cut in again. Where are you? Describe the van. Anna rattled off the motorway's name, the van's license plate, the driver's seedy appearance, her words tumbling over each other. The officer's tone shifted, a command embedded in her calm. Stay on the line, follow the van, you can do this. Anna's heart sank. Follow it? Into what? The traffic seemed to part, as if fate itself was conspiring to pull her deeper into the nightmare. She maneuvered her car, slipping behind the van, its taillights glowing like embers in the dusk. The officer's voice became a lifeline, guiding her through the haze. You're doing great, Anna. Keep us updated, stay calm. But calm was a distant memory. Her palms were slick with sweat, her breath shallow as she tailed the van through. The labyrinth of the motorway. Every turn felt like a descent, every second a gamble with the unknown. What if he knows I'm following? What if he stops? The van signaled, veering toward an exit, and Anna followed, her car a shadow in its wake. The city gave way to quieter streets, where streetlights cast long skeletal shadows. Her phone crackled with the officer's voice, but the world outside felt unreal, like a stage set for a tragedy. The van ran a red light, its tires screeching, and Anna's gut twisted. He knows. Her foot pressed harder on the gas, her car lurching forward, closing the gap. The streets narrowed, the buildings looming like silent witnesses to her pursuit. She whispered updates to the officer, her voice barely audible over the roar of her own fear. Then the world exploded into chaos. Sirens wailed, red and blue lights flooding the street like a surreal dawn. 4 police cars materialized, cutting off the van in a symphony of screeching tires and shouted commands. Officers swarmed, guns drawn, their voices a cacophony of authority. "Get out of the vehicle. Hands where we can see them." Anna's car idled, trapped in the chaos, her eyes fixed on the scene. The driver emerged, a hunched figure in the bare glare of headlights, collapsing face down on the asphalt. An officer rushed to the passenger side, and there she was. The little girl, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock, cradled in the officer's arms. The officer on the phone spoke, her voice cutting through the haze. "Hang up, Anna. Drive away. You're done here." But Anna couldn't move, not yet. She watched as the man was cuffed, his head bowed, his menace reduced to nothing. The girl was safe, but the image of her tear-streaked face lingered, a ghost in Anna's mind. Traffic began to move, a police officer waving her through, and Anna drove, her hands shaking, her mind a storm of fragmented thoughts. The city blurred past, its lights smearing into streaks of color, as if reality itself was unraveling. She drove home in silence, the radio off, the world muted. Her apartment felt foreign, its familiar walls unable to shield her from the weight of what she'd seen. She sank onto the couch, her body trembling, her mind replaying the night in a relentless loop. The girl's hands on the glass, the driver's hand on her head, the van's cold, blank exterior. Fear mingled with disgust, confusion with relief, each emotion a wave crashing against her. She thought of her own childhood, a memory surfacing unbidden, a time she'd been lost in a crowded market. Her mother's hand slipping from hers, the terror of being alone. What if no one had found her that day? As she pulled into her street, her phone rang, a blocked number flashing on the screen. Her heart skipped. She never answered unknown calls, but tonight was different. She pressed the phone to her ear, her voice barely a whisper. "Hello?" The officer's voice was warm, steady, an anchor in the storm. "Anna, it's me. I just wanted to thank you again. You did something incredible tonight." A pause, then. "I can't say much. It's an ongoing investigation. But know this, you saved that little girl's life." The words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through her. Anna stared into the dark, the officer's voice echoing in her mind. She'd acted on instinct, driven by a fleeting glimpse in a mirror, and somehow it had been enough. But the relief was tinged with dread, a shadow that clung to her thoughts. What if she hadn't looked back? What if she'd ignored the girl's silent plea? The night stretched on, and Anna sat, alone with the weight of a truth she couldn't unsee. Sometimes the line between safety and horror is as thin as a glance. In the mirror, the house stared at me through its cracked windows, daring me to step inside, as if it knew something I didn't. In the autumn of 1999, my friend had just claimed his slice of independence, a weathered single-story house on the outskirts of town, not far from his parents' place. He'd called me over, voice brimming with pride, asking for help with a chore he'd been dodging since moving in. Cleaning the chimney. I agreed, picturing a quick task, a few laughs, maybe a beer afterward. But as I pulled up to the property, the house seemed to crouch under the gray sky, its peeling paint curling like scorched skin, the chimney jutting upward like a blackened fang. Something about it felt wrong, like a memory you can't place but can't shake. Inside, the air was heavy, laced with a musty tang that clung to my throat. The living room, where the fireplace gaped like an open wound, was colder than the October warmth outside. My friend dragged a ladder in, his grin masking the exhaustion of home ownership. "This place is a fixer-upper," he said, gesturing at the creaky floorboards and faded wallpaper. "But it's mine." I nodded, grabbing a brush and bucket, ready to tackle the chimney. As I climbed the ladder, the fireplace's mouth seemed to swallow the light, its brick throat coated in decades of soot, thick and velvety, like the dust of forgotten years. Each scrape of the brush felt like disturbing a grave, releasing whispers of the house's past into the air. The work was grueling. Soot poured out in dark clouds, coating my hands, my clothes, my lungs. It swirled around, me, a living thing, settling on the hardwood floor in gritty piles. My friend stood below, holding the bucket, his coughs muffled by the haze. "Careful up there," he called. But the soot was relentless, spilling over, smudging the walls, turning the room into a blackened cave. By the time I climbed down, we were both streaked with ash, the floor buried under a layer that shifted underfoot. The room felt alive, watching, as if the soot carried secrets it wasn't ready to share. My friend surveyed the mess, hands on hips, his face a mask of black streaks. "This is a disaster," he muttered. "Let's grab lunch and deal with it later." My throat burned, and the promise of fresh air was too tempting to resist. We locked the door and left, the house's silence pressing against my back like a warning. At a greasy diner a few miles away, we ate burgers and fries, trading small talk about the house's endless repairs. But something gnawed at me, a vague unease I couldn't pin down. Had the house always felt so heavy, so watchful? I brushed it off as fatigue, the soot still lingering in my lungs. My friend laughed about the chimney, joking we'd unleashed a ghost. I forced a smile, but his words stirred a memory from my childhood, a story my grandmother once told me. She'd spoken of an old farmhouse her family owned, where the chimney would hum at night, a low, mournful sound. One winter, they found scratches inside the flue, too high for any animal to reach. She swore something lived in the walls, waiting for someone to disturb its rest. I shook off the thought, blaming the diner's stale coffee for my wandering mind. An hour later, we returned. The sun had dipped, casting long shadows through the windows, painting the house in shades of dusk. As we pushed open the door, the air felt thicker, a silence so dense it pressed against my eardrums. My friend stepped inside and froze. I collided with him, confused, until my eyes followed his gaze. The soot on the floor wasn't as we'd left it. It had shifted, swirled in chaotic patterns as if something had danced through it. And there, etched in the dark powder, were footprints, not ours. These were smaller, narrower, with toes unnaturally elongated, like claws or pointed shoes. They began near the fireplace, weaving across the room in no clear path, a silent mockery of logic. My stomach churned, a cold dread blooming in my chest. The prints didn't stop at the floor. They climbed the wall, smudged and uneven, defying gravity, then dotted the ceiling, a trail of dark smears overhead. Something had walked above us, upside down, while we were gone. "What is this?" my friend whispered, his voice trembling. My skin prickled, every hair standing on end. We'd been gone barely an hour. No one else had a key. No animal could have entered without leaving other signs. Yet the footprints were there, fresh, the soot still glistening in the dim light. They felt like a message, a claim, as if the house was saying, "You woke me." I forced myself to speak, my voice unsteady. "We need to check the house." He nodded, pale, his eyes wide with fear. We grabbed a broom and flashlight from the kitchen, our steps loud in the oppressive quiet. The dining room was colder, the windows still, though I swore they trembled faintly, as if the house itself was breathing. We stood close, whispering theories, intruders, pranks, anything rational. But nothing explained the prints on the ceiling. Then, I felt it. A chill, sharp and sudden, crawling up my spine like icy fingers. "Look up," a voice in my head urged. Not mine, but insistent. I obeyed, and my breath caught. Above us on the dining room ceiling was another set of footprints, fresher than the first, the soot damp and gleaming. They didn't connect to the walls or floor, just appeared mid-ceiling, hovering over us. They were angled toward us, toes pointed down, as if whatever made them had paused to watch. My friend followed my gaze, his face draining of color. The room seemed to shrink, shadows pooling in the corners, thicker than before. The air pulsed with a presence, heavy, alive, pressing against my skin. I swore I heard a faint scrape, like nails dragging across wood, echoing from above the ceiling. My heart pounded, drowning out all else. We stood frozen, staring at those impossible marks, waiting for something to move, to appear. But the silence was worse, a promise of something waiting just out of sight. We backed out, not daring to turn, away from that room until we were outside. The door closed behind us, heavy and final, locking us out, or locking something in. Neither of us spoke as we stood in the fading light, the house looming like a predator. I never returned, not even to help my friend move out months later. That house wasn't just old, it was alive, and we'd stirred something that didn't want to be woken. Years later, I heard rumors about the property, whispers of a tenant who fled after finding scratches inside the chimney, too precise to be animal marks. My grandmother's story came back to me, her voice trembling as she spoke of the thing in the walls, waiting for someone foolish enough to disturb its rest. Whatever it was, it left its mark on that house and on me. Some nights the farm feels like it's breathing, like the earth itself is watching us, waiting for us to notice it's alive. Our 7.5 acres stretch out under a sky too vast, dotted with stars that seem to flicker with secrets. The goats bleat softly in their pens, the chickens rustle in their coops, and the dogs, Nora, my loyal Rottweiler, and the skittish Great Pyrenees, patrol the edges of our world. My aunt's family lives with us, their house a stone's throw from ours, and we share the rhythm of this place, milking goats, gathering eggs, tossing feed to the animals. It's a life carved from sweat and routine, grounded in the dirt beneath our boots. But a year ago, something slipped into that rhythm, something that didn't belong. A voice, soft and sweet, that echoed through the dusk and turned our home into a maze of shadows. It started with my aunt. She was crossing the pasture at twilight, the air thick with the scent of damp grass and hay, heading to lock the chickens in for the night. The goats were penned near the front of the property, their bells jingling faintly as they nibbled at the fence line. She told us later how the world felt off that evening, how the silence was too heavy, like the calm before a storm. Then it came, a voice, high and lilting, drifting from nowhere. Hi goats, goaty, goaty goats," it sang, the words playful but wrong, like a child's rhyme twisted by something older. My aunt froze, her boots sinking into the soft earth, her eyes scanning the darkening field. Nothing. No one. Just the goats, their heads tilted as if they too had heard it. She called out, her voice trembling, but the only answer was the rustle of leaves in the wind. She ran back to her house, her heart pounding, certain she'd imagined it, until she realized she hadn't. A week later, my brother was out by the front of the property, tossing scraps to the dogs near the spot where the goats had been, the Baby chicks were there now, cheeping in their pen, their tiny bodies darting under the heat lamp. He was alone, the sky bruising purple as night crept in when the voice returned. "Here, chickie, chickie." It cooed, soft and teasing, as if calling the chicks to play. He dropped the feed bucket, his breath catching, and spun around, expecting to see me or Mom or Aunt. But the field was empty, the air still, the chicks oblivious. He told us later how the voice seemed to come from the ground itself, rising like mist, wrapping around him. He searched the area, his flashlight cutting through the dark, but found only shadows. That's when we started to wonder if something was wrong with this place, something we couldn't see. 3 weeks after that, my cousin came to stay for the weekend. We were on the deck one night, the wooden boards cool under our bare feet, the stars above us sharp and unyielding. The farm was quiet, save for the distant hum of crickets and the occasional bark from Nora. We were laughing, swapping stories about school. When it happened, a song, faint at first, then clear, floated through the air. A woman's voice, sweet and mournful, singing words we couldn't make out. We stopped, our laughter dying, our heads turning toward the sound. It was coming from the pasture, near the goat pen, where the darkness seemed to pulse with a life of its own. My skin prickled, my heart racing, as the voice grew louder, then stopped abruptly, leaving a silence that felt like a weight on my chest. I'd never heard it before, but it was real and it was terrifying. Dad started keeping a baseball bat by the door after that. He didn't say much, but the way his jaw tightened told me he was as unsettled as the rest of us. A month later, things got worse. My aunt and mother were in the barn, tending to the goats, the air thick with the musky scent of hay and animal. They were about to leave when they heard it, a voice just outside talking to the dogs. "Good boys, who's a good boy?" it said, bright and familiar, exactly like mine. They called out, thinking I was playing a prank, but when I walked into the barn moments later, straight from the house, their faces paled. I hadn't been outside. The dogs weren't even there. They were across the property, asleep in their kennel. The voice was mine, but it wasn't me. Here's the thing, there are only 3 women on this farm. Me, Mom, and Aunt. The 2 little girls, my cousins, have voices like sparrows, high and childish. But this voice, the one everyone kept hearing, was a young woman's, clear and confident, and they swore it sounded like me. How do you explain that? We started calling it the acreage ghost, half joking to keep the fear at bay. When tools went missing or chairs were moved in the night, we'd shrug and say it must be the ghost. But the jokes didn't help. The voice was real and it was everywhere. By the goat pen, the chicken coop, the barn, the deck. It was like the farm itself was speaking, mimicking us, watching us. I thought back to a story my grandma told me when I was little, about a woman who lived on this land decades ago. She was young, loved animals, used to sing to the cows at dusk. She died in an accident. Something about a storm and a fallen tree. But Grandma said her spirit never left. Was that who this was? I pushed the thought away, but it lingered. A seed of doubt that grew with every strange sound. The worst came one night when I was on the deck with Nora in the Great Pyrenees. The air was cool, the kind of night where the stars feel close enough to touch. Nora was curled at my feet, her warmth a comfort while the Pyrenees paced nervously. Then, out of nowhere, Nora's head snapped up, her eyes locked on a corner of the deck where the shadows pooled like ink. She growled, low and guttural, her hackles rising, her body rigid. The Pyrenees whimpered and bolted, disappearing into the house, but Nora didn't move. Her gaze was fixed, unblinking, as if she saw something I couldn't. Then I heard it. A thump, faint but deliberate, coming from the pasture. My pulse quickened, my breath shallow as the sound came again. Closer now, like footsteps on the soft earth. Nora's growl deepened, her teeth bared, but she didn't chase the sound. She stayed focused on that corner, as if whatever was there was more dangerous than the thumps. The air felt wrong, heavy, like it was pressing against my skin. The thumps grew louder, closer, until they were just beyond the deck, invisible in the dark. "Run," my mind screamed, and I obeyed, grabbing Nora's collar and dragging her inside, slamming the door behind us. I stood there, my back against the wood, my heart pounding, waiting for something to follow. Nothing did, but the silence was worse. It felt like the farm was holding its breath, waiting for me to step back out. That voice, that presence, it's still here. We don't talk about it much anymore, but I feel it in the way the goats stare at nothing, the way the chickens scatter for no reason. I hear it in the quiet moments when the wind carries a whisper that's almost my name. This farm isn't ours, not really. Something else calls it home, and it knows my voice. Some nights the dark doesn't just surround you, it reaches inside, whispering your name, daring you to look closer. I've lived through moments that blur the line between dream and dread, where the world feels too thin, like a veil about to tear. These aren't stories I tell lightly. They cling to me, etched in my mind with a clarity that stings. 3 encounters stand out, each one a shard of the impossible, each one pulling me deeper into a reality I can't explain. Listen closely, because once you hear them, you might start noticing the shadows in your own life. When I was 9, maybe 10, my family lived in an old farmhouse in Denton, Texas, a creaking relic from the 1940s. The upstairs attic, converted to a bedroom, was my shared sanctuary with 2 siblings. My bed was tucked against a narrow alcove leading to a window, where I always slept with my feet facing the glass, the night sky a distant comfort. But one night, for no reason I can recall, I flipped around, my head toward the room, my eyes open to its shadows. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I woke in the dead of night, the room bathed in a sickly green cyan glow, unnatural, pulsing. Above me, barely a foot from my face, floated an old woman, her withered frame draped in a translucent nightgown. Her hair, white and wispy, swayed as if underwater, and her eyes, empty, unblinking, locked onto mine. She wasn't just there, she was inside my head. Her presence a weight I couldn't shake. The glow came from her, seeping from her skin, her clothes, casting eerie patterns on the walls. I could see through her, her form fading at the edges. Yet she was real, solid in a way that defied logic. Strangely, I felt no fear, only a calm curiosity, as if she'd invited me to see her. I reached out, my fingers trembling, but she dissolved into the air, leaving the room dark and ordinary. I lay there, heart pounding, wondering if I'd dreamed her, but my body knew the truth. She was no dream. I never saw her again, but her face haunts me, vivid in my mind's eye, a memory I can replay like a film. My mother once told me a story about that house, a tale she'd heard from a neighbor. Years before we moved in, a woman lived alone there, tending the farm until she vanished one winter. They found her shawl in the attic, neatly folded, but no trace of her. Some said she never left, that the house kept her. I wonder if that was her, watching me, bound to the walls we called home. Fast forward to September 2024, a school night in a small town near the Oklahoma border. I was 17, alone in my room, the lights blazing as I prepared for bed. It was exactly 1 a.m., the kind of hour where silence feels alive. Then it came, 3 sharp knocks on my window, right beside my bed. The sound was deliberate, heavy like someone demanding entry. My heart lurched, but I told myself it was a friend, maybe trying to lure me out for a late-night adventure. I pulled back the blinds, expecting a familiar face. Nothing. Just the empty backyard, bathed in moonlight, the grass still as death. The ground outside was gravel, loud underfoot. Yet I'd heard no steps, no crunch, no sign of anyone approaching. Unease coiled in my gut, but I forced myself to move, heading for the door. Halfway there, the power cut out. A split-second blackout that plunged the house into darkness. My PC rebooted with a faint hum. The lights flickered back on, and I stumbled into the living room to find the Wi-Fi router blinking, resetting. No storm, no wind, no reason for the outage. The breaker panel was in the garage, untouched. My pulse quickened as I passed the front door, its tall windows flanking either side like silent sentinels. Then I saw it. A white figure, blurred and fleeting, darting past the glass. My breath caught, my hands fumbled to lock the door as if a deadbolt could stop whatever that was. Standing there, frozen, I heard it again. 3 sharp knocks, this time on the window to the left. The sound was identical, precise, mocking. I bolted back to my room, grabbed my Bowie knife, its cold steel a flimsy shield against the unknown. I didn't sleep that night, my eyes fixed on the window, waiting for the next knock that never came. I tried to rationalize it. A prank, a neighbor's kid, but the timing was impossible. The figure had moved too fast, the fence outside too frail to climb without collapsing, and the power outage, perfectly synced with the knocks. Something wanted my attention, and it wasn't human. The third encounter came months later, in that same border town where the nights were thick with secrets. I often snuck out to visit friends, a 20-minute walk through quiet streets, the darkness both friend and foe. One night, nearly home, I heard coyotes howling in the distance, a familiar sound that barely registered. But the howls grew closer, sharper, until they felt like a chorus circling me. Then came the whispers, soft at first, like leaves brushing together but growing louder, distinct, words I couldn't make out, voices overlapping, coming from every direction. To my right, a dense tree line loomed, black and impenetrable. Ahead and behind, the road stretched empty. To my left, the town's elementary school sat silent, its playground a maze of shadows. The whispers were close now, no more than 20 feet away, yet I saw nothing. My skin crawled, my breath shallow as the voices seemed to press against me, a living cage. I ran, my sneakers pounding the pavement, the whispers chasing me, fading only when I reached my porch and locked the door. I stood there, trembling, the silence of the house louder than the voices I'd fled. My uncle once warned me about those woods, a story he'd heard as a kid. Hunters used to speak of a presence in the trees, a thing that mimicked voices to lure people off the path. They called it the Whisperer, and no one who followed it was ever seen again. I don't know what stalked me that night, but it wasn't coyotes. It knew my name, and it wanted me to listen. These encounters in Denton, then in that border town, have left scars I can't explain. The woman in the attic, the knocks and the white shadow, the whispers in the dark, they're pieces of a puzzle I'm afraid to solve. What do you think they mean? Have you felt the weight of eyes in the night, heard a voice where no one stood? I'm still searching for answers, for a way to silence the echoes they've left in my mind. 3 years ago, I stood at the edge of death, and something followed me home. The room was heavy with the scent of antiseptic and sorrow. My cousin's hand cold in mine as his breaths grew shallow. I whispered empty promises. It'll be okay, just hold on. But his eyes, wet with tears, told me he knew the truth. In those final moments, his body surrendered, a foul release staining the sheets, a detail so raw it burned into my memory. Minutes later, he was gone, his last exhale a quiet theft of life. I thought the worst was over, but the real horror waited, lurking in the shadows of that day, ready to chase me into the night. The funeral came like a ritual to seal his absence. We gathered in silence, the air thick with grief and the faint crackle of the cremation fire. I helped lift his body from the bed, my hands steady despite the weight of loss. As we moved, something brushed my arm. A slick, unnoticed smear of that same foul waste. I didn't see it then, not until we neared the fire. A smell hit me, faint at first, like damp earth gone wrong. It grew stronger, sharper, clawing at my throat. Unlike anything I'd known. Not decay, not sickness, but something deeper, something cursed. I forced myself to stay silent, to honor him, but my skin crawled, my lungs rejecting the air. We placed him on the pyre, and I stepped back, the smell lingering like a stain on my soul. After the flames took him, I found a stream nearby, its water cold and clear. I scrubbed my arm until it stung, watching the water carry away the filth, convincing myself it was gone. It had to be gone. I climbed onto my bike, the 20-kilometer ride home stretching ahead like a lifeline to normalcy. It was 7:30 p.m., the time when the roads usually buzzed with headlights and horns. But that night, they were empty, the asphalt stretching into darkness, the streetlights flickering as if unsure of their purpose. The world felt abandoned, like I was the last soul left riding through a forgotten place. The tires hummed against the road, the rhythm lulling me into a haze. I pedaled harder, the cool air biting my face, trying to outrun the weight of the day. My mind wandered to a story my cousin once told me years ago, about a man who rode home after a funeral and felt something watching him from the trees. "It's just a story," he'd laughed. But now, alone on this silent road, it felt too real. I shook it off, focusing on the steady pump of my legs, the faint glow of my bike's headlamp cutting through the dusk. About 13 kilometers in, the road curved past a beach, its sand pale under the moonlight, the waves a distant murmur. Then I saw it, a figure sprawled by the roadside, just meters away. My first thought was a drunk, maybe a wanderer, but something about the shape felt wrong, too still, too deliberate. I kept pedaling, my eyes fixed ahead, but then it came again. That smell, the same unbearable stench from the funeral, flooded my senses. It wasn't just in the air, it was inside me, choking me like a hand, forcing its way down my throat. I told myself it was my imagination, that I just needed to get home, to shower, to forget. But the smell grew stronger, and the world changed. My headlamp flickered, casting jagged shadows on the road. My heart pounded, my breath shallow, as the air turned thick, heavy, like I was riding through water. Then I saw it, a black figure, short, barely half my height, standing dead center in the road. Its edges were blurred like smoke given form, but its presence was solid, undeniable. My stomach twisted, my instincts screaming one word: run. I swerved, my bike wobbling, my legs burning as I pushed past it, the tires screeching against the asphalt. I didn't look at it, couldn't look at it, but I felt its weight, its intent boring into my back. It moved. The moment I passed, I sensed it. Something chasing me, its presence a cold shadow at my heels. I pedaled faster, the speedometer climbing to 90 kilometers an hour, my lungs screaming, my muscles straining. The road blurred, the world a tunnel of darkness and fear, but it was there, keeping pace, impossibly fast. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. My mind raced, fragments of the funeral flashing, his tears, the smear on my arm, the fire's hungry glow. Had I carried something with me? Something that wouldn't let go? The beach faded behind me, the road stretching into a void. My body was ice, my sweat cold, my hands numb on the handlebars. I didn't dare look back, didn't dare slow down, but I felt it, closer now, its presence of pressure against my spine. The air was wrong, thick with that stench, as if the thing was breathing it into me. Keep going, I told myself, the command a lifeline. My cousin's voice echoed in my head from that old story. Don't stop, no matter what you hear. I clung to it, pedaling through the pain, through the fear, until my street came into view. Its familiar lights a fragile promise of safety. I skidded to a stop, my bike clattering to the ground, my legs trembling as I stumbled to my porch. The silence was deafening, the night pressing in like a living thing. I checked my arm, my breath hitching. The smear was back, dark and slick, the stench overwhelming as if I'd never washed it. I scrubbed it again later, under scalding water, but the feeling lingered, the certainty that something had followed me home. That thing, whatever it was, wasn't gone. Since that night, my world has changed. Shadows move where they shouldn't, corners of my room darker than they ought to be. The smell returns without warning, sharp and foul, waking me from dreams so vivid I wake drenched in sweat. Dreams of a road that never ends, of a figure waiting just out of sight. I don't know what it wants, but it knows me now. Even as I write this, my skin prickles, my pulse quickens as if it's listening, waiting for me to step back into the dark. The road stretched before us, a ribbon of hope, but in a heartbeat it betrayed us, swallowed by a river that hungered for everything we loved. 6 months pregnant, I sat beside my husband, my hand resting on the swell of my belly, our car cutting through the North Carolina dusk toward a beach vacation we'd planned for months. This was our final escape before our daughter's arrival, a stolen moment of peace before life reshaped us forever. But as we cruised along I-40, the sky turned bruised, heavy with a threat we couldn't name. Feel the air grow thick, the fragile, calm before the world unraveled, because what followed was a nightmare we couldn't outrun. Rain had battered the windshield for hours, a relentless veil blurring the horizon. But we pressed on, trusting the highway's promise. Then, in an instant, it was gone. 5 car lengths ahead, the pavement dissolved into a churning wall of muddy water. A beast awakened. My husband slammed the brakes, the car lurching as my heart pounded against my ribs. The flood's thunder filled the air, a primal force shaking. The earth as asphalt peeled away like brittle skin, plunging into the raging river below. The ground was no longer solid. It was alive, tearing itself apart before our eyes. Concrete barriers trapped us, the road ahead a grave, the path behind buckling under the water's assault. No cell service, no voice to reach beyond the storm. I pressed my hand harder against my belly, whispering to our daughter, "We'll keep you safe." But fear choked my words. We were alone, invisible, consumed by a tempest that cared for nothing. From the rain-soaked haze, they emerged. Strangers, their silhouettes sharp against the storm, moving with quiet resolve. Angels in worn jackets, their hands bleeding as they clawed at the concrete barrier. They worked tirelessly, dismantling our prison piece by jagged piece. My breath caught, hope flickering as they carved a path to freedom. My husband gripped the wheel, his face taut, and as the road behind us crumbled into the river's jaws, we fled back toward Tennessee, the flood's fury at our heels. But safety was an illusion. The mountain roads we entered were a maze of mud and shadow, slick under the tires, choked with fallen trees looming like specters in the headlights. Rain blinded us, each curve a gamble, and our phones remained silent, dead as the world around us. It was just us, the storm and the life I carried, adrift in a ghost realm where time felt like a trap. My father-in-law's voice echoed in my mind, a story he'd told one rainy evening, his eyes clouded with memory. Decades ago, he'd been caught in a flash flood in these mountains, his truck nearly swept away by a swollen creek. The water moved with purpose, he said, not just flowing but hunting, clawing at his tires as if it knew he was there. He'd climbed a ridge, clutching his atlas, praying until the waters receded. That night he dreamed of a river with eyes, staring at him, waiting for him to fall. I'd laughed at his tattered atlas then, but now, lost in this deluge, I clung to his words like a lifeline. The flood wasn't just nature. It was a force with intent, and we were its prey. I glanced at my husband. His jaw clenched and wondered if he felt it too. The sense that something watched us, waiting for a mistake. Hours blurred into a fog of dread and exhaustion. We reached Asheville, desperate for refuge, but found a city, drowning. Streets were rivers, cars abandoned like shipwrecks, homes half submerged in murky torrents. Debris, shattered furniture, twisted signs, entire trees drifted past, carried by currents that seemed to pulse with malice. Our phones were useless, the road we'd taken sealed behind us, locking us in a maze of flooded dead ends. Gas stations stood dark, their pumps lifeless. Restaurants were shuttered, hotels packed with the stranded. The fuel gauge dipped below a quarter tank, each tick a stab of panic. Our daughter stirred inside me, her movements a quiet plea, and I fought to keep my voice steady for my husband's sake. We have to keep going, I told myself, but every path led nowhere, and the storm's weight grew heavier with each mile. With no options left, we pulled into a truck stop parking lot. The world beyond our windows a void. No lights, no sound, just darkness folding around us like a shroud. We had a few snacks, crumbled chips, a half-empty water bottle, a blanket too thin to fight the chill seeping through the glass. My husband draped it over me, his touch steady, but his eyes hollow, etched with a fear he wouldn't name. The rain hammered the roof, a relentless assault, the wind weaving through distant trees like a mournful chant. Time stretched, each second a wait, the silence between us louder than the storm. I held my belly, whispering to our daughter, promising. A dawn I couldn't see. Then a sound, a low, distant rush like water surging closer. My husband tensed, peering into the dark, but we saw nothing, only the endless rain. Was the flood creeping toward us, stalking us in the night? I pushed the thought away, but my heart raced, the car feeling smaller, the darkness hungrier. Remembered my father-in-law's dream, the river's eyes, and wondered if they were watching us now. Past midnight, my husband stirred, his voice a whisper. Look there. A line of lights flickered on I-26, faint but moving. A thread of hope. In the abyss, was the road open? We watched, breath held, praying for a miracle. Take the risk, my heart urged, and we did, easing onto the interstate with our dwindling fuel. The road was a battlefield, water pooling across the lanes, debris scattered like the bones of a broken world. Branches jutted from the mud, signs hung mangled, and fresh landslides scarred the pavement. Halfway through, the car slipped, tires skidding on a slick of mud, my stomach lurching as we veered toward the edge. Husband corrected, his hand steady, but my pulse thundered, the flood's shadow never far. We drove in silence, every shadow a threat, every ripple a warning. 20 miles later we saw it. A gas station, its lights a dim beacon, cash only but open. We scraped together crumpled bills, enough to fill the tank, and the act felt sacred, a fragile vow of survival. We weren't free, But we were alive, and that was enough for now. An hour later, our phones flickered to life. The first signal in 14 hours. A bridge to a world we'd nearly lost. We were still here, still breathing. When we reached a hotel in South Carolina, 12 hours behind schedule, exhaustion weighed us down, but relief burned brighter. I sank into my husband's arms, tears mingling with the rain still drying on. My skin, grateful for every heartbeat. That night haunts me, the terror of the flood, the suffocating isolation, the strangers who became our salvation, and the eerie silence that followed, pierced only by the distant rush of unseen waters. We'll tell our daughter this story, how we fought for her, how we learned that control is a fleeting dream when nature claims its own. And I swear, I'll never mock my father-in-law's atlas again. It's more than a map. It's a testament to those who faced the flood and lived to tell the tale. Even now, at 39, I question what's real. But at 5, I lived in a house that didn't belong to the living. It stood at the edge of a forgotten airfield, its silhouette jagged against the gray UK sky, surrounded by marshland that stretched into an endless haze. My parents thought it was a fresh start, a converted barn turned home, but the townsfolk whispered otherwise. They called it cursed, a place where outcasts once wove dark rituals under moonless nights. I was too young to understand, but I felt the way the air inside seemed to watch, to wait, to hold its breath. That house wasn't ours, and something inside wanted us to know it. We'd only been there a few weeks when the strangeness began. Mom would come home from town, her face tight, saying people got quiet when she mentioned where we lived. "It's just small-town gossip," she'd say. But her eyes betrayed her. Dad brushed it off, his laugh forced, but I noticed how he checked the locks twice each night. The house itself was a maze of odd angles, creaking floorboards, a central staircase flanked by balconies. My bedroom perched on the right with a cabin bed and wardrobes beneath. At night it felt alive, the walls humming with secrets I couldn't name. I had a friend then, a boy no one else saw. He'd sit with me in the dim glow of my nightlight, whispering stories of places beyond the marsh. Mom called him imaginary, but he felt real. His laughter, his small hand brushing mine. Then there were the cats, two sleek shadows who'd always curled at my feet. One evening they froze, their eyes wide, and scrambled up the living room wall, claws digging into the plaster, staring at me as if I'd become something else. I laughed, thinking it a game, but their gaze held no warmth, only fear. Nights were the worst. I'd dream of wolves, their eyes glinting through a forest that never ended. Each dream stopped at the same clearing, the pack circling, their breath hot. I'd wake, heart pounding, the room too still. One night the dream didn't stop. I ran past the clearing, branches tearing at my skin until I stumbled into open ground. The wolves lunged and I woke, gasping, my body rigid. Then it happened. A.E. Hand, cold and rough, gripped the edge of my bed. I swung my fist, connecting with something solid, and a shadow darted from my room, passing through the closed door like smoke. A high, piercing wail trailed behind, fading into the dark. I didn't sleep that night, my eyes fixed on the door, waiting for it to return. I told Mom, but she said it was a nightmare, her voice gentle but uncertain. Dad was away, working late, and the house felt emptier without him. The air grew heavier, the shadows deeper, as if the walls were closing in. I started noticing things. My toys moved when I hadn't touched them, the staircase creaking when no one walked it. The boy, my friend, stopped coming, and I wondered if he was hiding too. The worst came one night after Mom tucked me in. Her footsteps faded down the stairs, leaving me with the hum of the house. I drifted, half asleep, when a sound jolted me awake. My own voice screaming, raw and desperate, as if my life depended on it. But I wasn't screaming. I lay still, my throat silent, my body frozen. The sound came from the room itself, echoing off the walls, filling the air with terror. Then it stopped, and the silence was worse, like a void swallowing everything. Mom's footsteps thundered up the stairs, her voice calling my name. Our dog, a lean black shadow with greyhound grace, sat outside my door, his eyes fixed on the wood, his body tense as if guarding something. Mom burst in and the room was wrong. In the center, my toys stood stacked, a tower of dolls and blocks reaching higher than I could climb. At the top, my teddy bear sat, its glass eyes glinting, playing a tinny lullaby without being touched. My bed was empty, the sheets cold. Mom's face drained of color, her hands trembling as she searched the house, calling my name, her voice breaking. She tore through every room, the wardrobes, the attic, but I was gone. The house felt alive then, its walls watching, its silence mocking. She ran to the neighbors, a family across the shared wall, begging for help. They searched the marsh, the airfield, their flashlights cutting through the fog, but found nothing. Hours later, the neighbor's wife opened their spare room, and there I was, asleep in their bed, pressed against the wall that touched mine, as if I'd never left. I woke to Mom's tears, her arms crushing me, but I remembered nothing, only a dream of a boy pulling me through shadows, his voice urgent. Hide. We left the next day, our belongings shoved into boxes, the house abandoned. Mom and Dad rented it to a family who ran the town's Italian restaurant, thinking it was over. It wasn't. Weeks later, the father pounded on our new door, his face pale, and threw the keys at Dad's feet. I'm never going back, he said, his voice shaking, and left without another word. The house didn't want tenants. It wanted something else. Years later, Mom told me the truth when I was 18. Her words careful, as if speaking them might summon it back. Dad confirmed it at 21, his story identical, their divorce ensuring no collusion. The townsfolk had always known the house was a wound, a place where dark rites had scarred the earth. To sell it, we had to have it blessed. A woman came, her face lined with years, her hands clutching a worn book. She walked the rooms, her voice low, and said 2 spirits lived there. A boy, small and frightened, and something darker, hunting him through the walls. The boy had been hiding, she said, and maybe he'd tried to save me. I'm skeptical now, my adult mind clinging to logic, but the memories linger, sharp and jagged. A few years ago, I was working nearby and drove to the ice house, curiosity pulling me back. I parked at the lane's end, the airfield silent, the marsh swallowing the horizon. The house stood unchanged, its windows black, its walls leaning as if tired. I stared, my hands tight on the wheel, and felt it, a weight, a malice, pressing against my chest. I floored the gas, the tires spinning, and swore I'd never return. That house is still there waiting, and I know it remembers me. The beach stretched before me, golden and free, but beneath its warmth lurked a shadow I couldn't see, waiting to claim my peace. At 16, I was a Russian girl, petite and pale, stepping into a Turkish summer with my family, eager for sun and escape. The hotel buzzed with life, laughter, music, the salty tang of the sea. But for me, it was the volleyball court that called, a place to lose myself in the rhythm of the game. That's where I met Ibrahim, a 19-year-old trainer, whose smile felt too sharp, too knowing. Feel the weight of his gaze. The moment innocence began to crack, because what started as a casual encounter spiraled into a fear I still can't shake. The first day was harmless enough. The volleyball tournament was a blur of sand and sweat. my team cheering as we spiked and dove. Afterward, Ibrahim approached, his voice cutting through the crowd, speaking Russian with a practiced ease. "What's your name? How old are you?" he asked, his eyes lingering too long. I told him, 16, just a girl on vacation, and he smiled, saying, "You're so little." I brushed it off, chalking it up to politeness, my inexperience, with boys clouding my judgment. He seemed friendly, but something in his tone felt like a hook, catching me unaware. The next day, I returned to the court, the sun blazing, the sea glittering like a promise. After the game, Ibrahim was there, again his presence heavier this time. "Can I have your number?" he asked, his smile unwavering. Naive, I gave it, thinking he just wanted a chat, a chance to practice my English with someone new. I didn't see the trap, didn't feel the net closing around me. That night, he texted, inviting me to meet on the beach at 10. The idea felt thrilling, a chance to step out of my shy shell, to talk with someone beyond my Russian circle. Walk into the night, my curiosity urged, and I did. The sand cool beneath my feet, the waves a distant lullaby. At first it was easy, small talk about my English. His surprise at my fluency, the stars above us bright and careless. But then the air shifted. Ibrahim moved closer, his frame towering, athletic, a stark reminder of my own fragility. He could break me if he wanted. The thought flickered unbidden as he took my hand without asking. "Your hands are so warm, so small," he said, his voice low, his grip too tight. "I like it." My stomach twisted, but I pulled away, forcing a laugh. On the walk back, his questions grew sharper. How many boyfriends had I had? Had I ever kissed a boy? At the hotel gate, he leaned in, aiming for my cheek, but I dodged, my heart racing. His eyes followed me, heavy, claiming as I slipped into the safety of my room. From that night, everything changed. Ibrahim's texts flooded my phone, each one a weight. Sweet at first, then insistent, laced with a hunger I couldn't ignore. "You're so sweet," he wrote. "I want to kiss you." I stopped replying, hoping he'd fade, but he didn't. He was everywhere. At the volleyball court, he'd peel off his shirt when I arrived, his movements deliberate, his gaze pinning me in place. I told myself it didn't matter, but after days of this, I quit the game, noticing later he kept his shirt on when I wasn't there. He was performing, and I was the audience he wouldn't release. The hotel, once a haven, became a cage. Ibrahim appeared on the paths, by the pool, his steps too close, his voice too familiar. "Why are you so tense?" he'd ask when he caught me alone, his smile masking something darker. "You're so cute. I really want to kiss you." Each word was a stone, building a wall around my freedom. The worst came one evening on the terrace where I sat with my family, the clink of cutlery and laughter a fragile shield. Ibrahim appeared, tray in hand, posing as a waiter. His eyes locked on me. My breath caught, my fork trembling as he leaned too close, asking if I needed anything. My parents didn't notice, but I felt trapped, the hotel's walls closing in, a prison disguised as paradise. I was suffocating, his presence a chain I couldn't break. Later, alone in my room, panic surged, my chest tight, the realization hitting hard. We were in a closed space, and he knew where to find me. I remembered a story my friend Anna had told me, her voice trembling over a late-night call. Last summer, at a resort in Greece, a local worker had followed her, leaving notes under her door, watching her from the shadows. She'd told the staff, but they'd dismissed it, and she'd spent her vacation locked in her room, afraid to step outside. I wondered if I was walking her path, if Ibrahim's smile hid the same intent. My friends at first saw it differently. "It's just a vacation," Bling, they giggled, dazzled by his charm. Have some fun. But as his behavior grew bolder, lingering near our table, trailing me to the lobby, their laughter faded, replaced by unease. They saw what I felt. He wasn't letting go. I stopped going to the beach, avoided the pool, kept my head down in the dining hall, but his presence lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. One night, alone by the hotel's garden, I saw him in the distance, standing still, watching, my pulse hammered, the air too thick to breathe as I ran back to my room, locking the door. I blocked his number, cut off all contact, but the fear stayed, a knot in my chest. Had I invited this? Was it my fault for being too open, too trusting? The vacation ended and we left Turkey, but the weight of those days didn't lift. I was 16, just a girl, but he'd seen me as something else, something to claim. The hotel's golden glow, the beach's warmth, they're tainted now, memories laced with dread. I still wonder if I could have done something differently, if my naivety painted a target on my back. He was too old, I was too young, and the line between kindness and control was a blur I didn't see until it was too late. This story clings to me, a warning etched in every step I take alone. Have you ever felt eyes on you, a presence that wouldn't fade? I hope you never do, because once it starts, the world feels smaller, and safety feels like a lie. In the summer of 2011, I saw something in the woods that still haunts my dreams, something that wasn't meant for human eyes. I was 15, sitting at my grandma's kitchen table in Appalachian, Ohio, the air thick with the scent of fried chicken and cornbread. Our family sprawled across 80 acres of farmland, houses dotted like islands in a sea of fields and forest. The woods loomed at the edges, dark and endless, swallowing the horizon. No internet, no cell service, just us, the land, and the quiet that felt too heavy after dusk. That Sunday evening, as we laughed over dinner, my youngest cousin, barely 7, slipped out to walk the gravel trail to his house. He came back running, his face pale, his voice broken, saying something was out there watching him. Grandma chuckled, ruffling his hair, saying he'd seen a deer or his own shadow. Grandpa nodded, his fork scraping the plate, dismissing it as kid stuff. My cousin's eyes, wide and wet, told a different story, but I smirked, thinking he was hamming it up for attention. "I'll check it out," I said. Have to tease him, have to prove him wrong. We stepped onto the porch, the evening air cool against my skin, the gravel trail stretching into the gloom where the woods waited. The forest felt alive, its branches whispering secrets I couldn't hear. I walked ahead, my sneakers crunching, my cousin trailing close, his breath fast and shallow. He stopped dead at the trail's bend, his small hand gripping my arm, his finger pointing into the trees. "There," he whispered, and my eyes followed, landing on something yards away, something wrong. It was a mass, blacker than the shadows, towering 7 feet, its edges blurred like ink bleeding into water. My mind scrambled for an explanation. A tree, a tarp, a trick of the light, but none came. It had eyes, small and beady, glinting like wet stones, and a flat dog-like nose, pressed against an unseen face. No limbs, no hair, just a shape, quivering faintly, as if alive with a pulse I couldn't see. This wasn't a bear, wasn't anything. I knew. It was something else, something that didn't belong. My heart slammed against my ribs, my breath caught in my throat. "Run!" my mind screamed, and we did. Tearing back to the house, my cousin stumbling over the gravel, his gasps sharp in the quiet. We burst into the kitchen, words tumbling out, begging the family to come see. Grandma and Grandpa were elbow deep in dishes, their laughs brushing us off. "You kids and your pranks," Grandpa said, but I couldn't shake the image. Those eyes, that trembling mass. I needed someone else to see it, to make it real. I grabbed my other cousins, 14 and a bit older, their eyes rolling but curious. "Fine, show us," they said. And we marched back to the trail, the dusk thicker now, the woods darker. It was still there. The four of us froze, our breaths shallow, staring at the mass in the exact same spot, its shape sharper against the fading light. My 14-year-old cousin squinted, his bravado pushing him forward a step. "What is that?" he muttered. And the thing moved. Not a step, not a lunge, but a flinch, its body lifting an inch off the ground, fast and wrong. My brain screamed, my legs moved before I could think, and we ran. All four of us, hearts pounding, the trail blurring beneath us. It saw us, it knew we were there. We crashed back into the house, our voices overlapping, pleading for Grandpa to come out, to see what we'd seen. He laughed, wiping his hands on a dish towel, calling us dramatic. We begged for an hour, our fear wearing him down until he sighed, and followed us out. The trail was silent now, the woods a wall of black. We pointed to the spot, the small tree stump marking where it stood, but the mass was gone, the air empty. It was like it had never been there, but I knew it had. Grandpa shook his head, muttering about imaginations, but I saw the way his eyes lingered on the trees, uncertain. I've thought about that night for years, the way it carved itself into my memory. It wasn't a bear. I'd seen one once, rearing up, and it was nothing like this. This thing didn't move, didn't breathe, but it lived. Its presence a weight that pressed against my soul. I remembered a story my uncle told me as a kid, about a hunter who saw a shadow in these woods, tall and black, that followed him home. "Some things live out there," he'd said, his voice low. "Things that don't want to be seen." I'd laughed then, but now, standing on that trail, I wondered if he'd seen it too. People ask why I didn't take a picture, but back then my flip phone was useless without service, left behind in my room. Even if I had it, I wouldn't have dared look away from that thing. I've had one other strange moment in my life when I was younger, a sphere of light floating in my backyard, soft and calming, like a friend. But this mass, this shadow, was different. It was fear, raw and primal, a terror that lived in my bones. I still know that spot, the stump marking it like a grave. I haven't gone back and I don't plan to. But sometimes in the quiet of the night, I feel it watching, waiting for me to step into the woods again. The darkness in our house wasn't just empty. It watched, it called, and one night it wore a face that wasn't human. At 5 years old, I lived in a world where shadows held secrets, where the high ceilings of our home seemed to trap whispers. I couldn't understand. My parents, avid travelers, had filled our living room with relics from distant lands, but one stood out, a bronze mask from Mexico, its green glass eyes glinting like stars in the night. It hung high on the wall, a silent guardian of stories I wasn't meant to know. Feel the chill of those eyes, the moment innocence began to fray, because what I saw that night still haunts me, a memory that refuses to fade. The mask was my mother's treasure, bought years before I was born on a trip through Mexico's sun-scorched markets. She loved its craftsmanship, the woman's face serene yet distant, adorned with a tiara and long ring earrings, its green pupils catching every flicker of light. At night, it glowed, not with warmth, but with a cold, otherworldly life. My father called it a tourist trinket, but my mother saw something deeper, a piece of history she couldn't explain. It hung above the living room, among other keepsakes, woven tapestries, carved idols, but none felt as alive as the mask. Our house, with its towering 3.2-meter ceilings, seemed to amplify its presence, the shadows stretching long and thin across the walls. As a child, I feared the dark, not just for its silence, but for the voices it carried. I'd hear them at night, soft and indistinct, calling from corners where no one stood. My dad told me to toughen up, dismissing my tears as childish fancy. My mom was harsher, leaving me sobbing in the hallway when I begged for clothes, convinced someone was in my room. They didn't believe me, but the house did. One night, when I was 5, the darkness spoke my name. A woman's voice, young and clear, pulled me from sleep, soft but insistent. It came from the living room, cutting through the stillness like a thread. My eyes, adjusted to the dark, saw the faint glow of streetlight seeping through the curtains. I slipped from my bed, heart thumping, and opened my door, calling out, "Sis, is that you?" No answer, only the voice again, my name a summons I couldn't ignore. "Step into the shadows," it seemed to say, and I did, my bare feet cold on the hardwood floor. The living room loomed ahead, vast and dim, the mask's green eyes catching, the light glinting like beacons. Then I saw it, a woman's head, not bronze but flesh, floating in the center of the room. Its eyes glowed green, unblinking, the tiara gleaming faintly, but there was no neck, no body, just a head suspended in the air. It wasn't grotesque, but eerily beautiful, its skin pale, its features soft. It wasn't the mask, yet it was, alive in a way that defied reason. The head drifted closer, stopping inches from my face, its eyes locking onto mine. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, as if the air itself held me captive. "Don't be afraid," it said, its voice the same that had called me, calm but commanding. "We only want to talk. Open your heart, listen." Confusion swirled in my mind. What did it mean? Why me? My hand reached out, trembling, drawn to its impossible reality. My fingers brushed its cheek, cold as stone, and the skin began to flake, dry and brittle, peeling away to reveal a skull beneath. The green eyes never wavered, staring through me, their glow piercing my soul. Terror surged, a scream tearing from my throat, but my hand was frozen, glued to the skull. Suddenly, light flooded the room, my mother's voice sharp with anger. "What are you doing, screaming in the dark?" She stood in the doorway, her face a mix of irritation and concern. Then her eyes fell to my hands, clutching the bronze mask, its green pupils dull in the lamplight. How had it gotten there? I hadn't climbed the wall, hadn't touched it. I stammered, telling her everything. The voice, the head, the flaking skin, but she brushed it off, sending me back to bed. Sleep was impossible. The mask's eyes burned into my memory, watching even in the dark. The mask never returned to the wall. My mother stored it away, refusing to speak of that night. But years later, I pressed her for answers. Her face paled, her voice low, as she admitted what she'd heard. While fetching a ladder to rehang the mask, she'd placed it on the dining table, and a girl's laughter, soft, mocking, had echoed from it, though no one was there. It wasn't my sister, wasn't me, wasn't anything she could explain. She'd tried to dismiss it, to cling to reason, but the sound had chilled her, and soon after the mask was gone, sold or discarded. Its fate a mystery. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in that laughter. My father, too, had a story, one he shared only once, years after we'd moved. On that same Mexico trip, the market vendor who sold the mask had warned them, "It sees more than you think." He'd thought it a sales pitch, but the vendor's eyes, heavy with unease, stayed with him. They'd laughed it off, but after my night, he wondered if the mask carried something they'd brought home. That night changed me. The dark wasn't just empty anymore. It was alive, and it knew my name. I avoided the living room for years, even in daylight, the high ceilings feeling like a trap for things unseen. The mask was gone, but its eyes lingered, green and unyielding, in every shadow I passed. I still hear that voice sometimes in dreams where the head floats again, its skull smiling, its words a riddle I can't solve. What did it want? Why me? Have you ever felt a presence in the dark? Something that knows you better than you know yourself? I hope you never do, because once it finds you, the world feels different, and safety is a lie you can't believe anymore.